Good evening, Mr. Chair. It is now 7 o'clock. It appears you have a quorum present. We'll confirm at roll call and you can proceed with tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to our virtual meeting of Brampton's Planning and Development Committee. We will begin the meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll call for attendance at today's meeting.
Members of committee, I will call your name. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Dillon. Councillor Dillon. I'll come back to you. Councillor Singh.
Present.
Councillor Fortini.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
I'm here.
Councillor Bowman, my apologies.
I'm here.
Councillor Paleshi.
Present.
Councillor Willens.
I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Vicente.
Present.
Councillor Santos.
Present.
Councillor Dillon. I don't see Councillor Dillon present, so he'll be marked as absent. Chair Medeiros is here. There are 9 members present, Mr. Chair. You have quorum.
Thank you very much. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda?
Yes, I do, Councillor Singh. Item 5.4, I will be declaring a conflict.
Okay, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So the councillors required, 1, to state the nature of the conflict, and 2, there is a declaration of conflict form that must be completed in accordance with the Municipal Act and submitted to the clerk's office.
Okay.
This is the one I emailed about to the clerk. So you can email me the form. I'll sign it up right now.
Okay. Can you just state that you have to state for the public record through you, Mr. Chair, the nature of your conflict, Councillor?
Yes. A family member manages the gas station across the street. So just abundance and caution.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll get you that form. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee, as part of our consent motion process, I will read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
My apologies. We skipped over approval of the agenda.
Okay. Yes, that's correct. Approval of the agenda. Does any member wish to add a business item for tonight's meeting? I see none, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Fortini. Anyone opposed? I see none. So we go to declarations. Okay, we've gone through the declarations of interest on the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and we go now to consent motion. Committee, as part of our consent motion process, I will read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion, and any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any item not held for debate will be considered as part of the consent motion voted on for approval. I will start reading the relevant agenda items, and members can identify any items to be held for debate. Item 7.1, staff report, application for draft plan subdivision to permit residential development of 51 dwellings, Forest Side Estates, KLM Planning Partners, Block 373, Plan 43M 1799, Block 94, Ward 10. In consent. Item 8.1, minutes, Brampton Heritage Board, January 18th. In consent. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Singh to approve the consent motion. Is anyone opposed? I see. Oh, I believe it's a recorded vote. City Clerk, if you can hold the recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All in favor of the consent motion, please indicate. Councillor Dillon still appears to be absent. Councillor Singh.
Yes.
Councillor Fortini.
Yes.
Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Bowman.
Yes.
Councillor Paleshi.
Yes.
Councillor Willens. Councillor Willens.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Vicente.
Yes.
Councillor Santos.
Yes.
Chair Medeiros.
Yes.
That carries 9-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Our next item of tonight's agenda is a statutory public meeting. This is a public meeting of the Planning and Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at this public meeting are the result of applications made under the Planning Act. There are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. Tonight, we do not have any city-initiated proposals for a statutory public meeting. The intent of this public meeting is to receive submissions from the public regarding these proposals. Given we have persons watching this meeting through the city's live stream, we will have staff present each proposal subject to a statutory public meeting unless committee decides otherwise. After receiving any pre-registered delegations, members of the committee may ask questions for clarification, but will not engage in debate on the proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. The city has posted on its website, brampton.ca, supporting information documentation for these development applications for public review and reference. We will now proceed to consider the 4 items on this evening's statutory public meeting agenda. After consideration of these public meeting items, committee will deal with the balance of the agenda items on tonight's agenda. The first item is item 5.1, application to amend the zoning bylaw Malone Given Parsons Limited, Greenwood Corp, Ward 1, to permit mixed-use buildings containing residential, hotel, and commercial uses with a 42-story and a 34-story tower, 3133 George Street North, 1828 Elizabeth Street North, southeast corner of Elizabeth Street North and Nelson Street, Ward 1. And I will now welcome Carmen Caruso from our Central Area Planning, Building, Economic Development Department. Welcome, Carmen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and everyone attending this virtual public meeting this evening. My name is Carmen Caruso, and I'm the planner assigned to process and review to amend the zoning bylaw. The application was submitted by Malone Given Parsons on behalf of Greenwood Corp and Sweeney Holdings Limited. Through this presentation, I will be providing some of the technical background and a brief overview of the policy context associated with this proposal, and also outlining some of the preliminary issues that will need to be addressed as part of this application. Please note that as outlined in the public meeting notice, the Development Committee will not make a decision on this application this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to provide residents with information with respect to this proposal and seek public feedback. A decision in support of or in opposition to the application will be made at a later date. Next slide, please. The site for this proposal is located in Brampton's downtown core on the southeast corner of Elizabeth Street North and Nelson Street West, and municipally known as 31 to 33 George Street North and 18 to 28 Elizabeth Street North. Next slide, please. This slide shows the types of land uses on the site and in the area. So the subject site contains a heritage resource known as the Eggerly Mansion, which is to be maintained and preserved. And the site also includes 4 single detached dwellings with associated accessory structures and a 2-story mixed-use building, which are intended to be demolished to facilitate the proposal. There are a range of land uses in the vicinity of the subject site, including vacant land and office buildings located immediately to the north, vacant land and parking facilities to the east, a portion which is intended to be developed as the city's center for innovation, single detached and semi-detached dwellings to the west, hydroelectric facilities to the south, and we'll call it to the southeast, I guess, a 27-story mixed-use tower. Also in the vicinity is a number of commercial and office establishments, City Hall, the downtown Brampton GO Station, and the Rose Theatre. Next slide, please. Slide indicates the extent of the property owners who would have received the public notice for this application. The notification area extends 240 meters beyond the subject site in all directions. The notice of the public meeting for this application was also published in the Brampton Guardian on January 6, 2022, and a sign describing that application was also posted on the property. The legislative notice requirements under the Planning Act and the more stringent notice requirements in the official plan have been satisfied for this application. Next slide, please. As noted, the applicant has submitted a development application to amend the zoning bylaw, And the applicant's proposing 2 high-rise towers, 42 and 34 stories in height, a total of 771 residential units, including 15 bachelor units, 513 one units, 225 two-bedroom units, 18 three-bedroom units. Of the 771 residential units, 40 are intended to be affordable. Also included in the proposal is 205 hotel units, 694 square meters of retail space, 477 parking spaces, 530 bicycle parking spaces, 1 access from Elizabeth Street North, and as noted previously, the preservation of the designated heritage resource on the property. Next slide, please. The property is designated central area in the official plan and is within the urban growth center. Policies in the official plan require growth to be concentrated on lands within these designations, accommodating a significant portion of population and employment growth. Lands within the central area and urban growth center are preferred locations for investment and intensification, permitting a full range of office, retail, commercial, and service activities, as well as a wide range of residential institutional uses. The official plan also indicates that the property is located within an anchor mobility hub. Lands within the anchor mobility hub are expected to be developed for transit supportive densities and a built form designed to foster a pedestrian-friendly environment that accommodates the highest combined people and jobs per hectare within the urban growth center. Buildings within the anchor mobility hub are expected to be designed to achieve a combined floor space index of approximately 4 over the entire area. An amendment to the city's main official plan document is not required for this proposal. Next slide, please. The site is designated central area mixed use in the downtown Brampton secondary plan. Similar to the official plan, lands within this designation are intended to accommodate mixed-use developments incorporating any combination of a range of uses, including commercial, retail, office, institutional, and residential. The secondary plan also shows that a portion of the site is within Special Policy Area 3, which is an area that may be susceptible to flooding associated with the Etobicoke Creek. The Special Policy Area is divided into 4 sub-areas, which each with distinguishing characteristics in terms of their potential for development. The portion of this property that is subject to Special Policy 3 is within the sub-area 3A. This sub-area is on the fringe of the Special Policy Area and can be developed for a wider range and more intense land uses due to the capability to provide accessibility to flood-free lands. Throughout the entirety of Sub-Area 3A, a maximum 900 new dwelling units and a total of 41,000 square meters of non-residential uses are permitted. Flood protection measures are also required to be included in the building design. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required to facilitate the proposal. Next slide, please. The site has a downtown commercial zoning as well as a lower density residential zoning. The downtown commercial zoning permits a wide range of residential and non-residential uses. The lower density residential zoning allows for a range of dwelling types from single detached to multiple residential uses up to 4 units. Also currently permitted zone is a lodging house and a supportive housing residence. The scale of this proposal requires a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to permit this development. The zoning bylaw submitted by the applicant to be reviewed proposes to rezone the land to permit commercial uses, a residential apartment building, and an increase in building height. Parking for the proposal will exceed the minimum requirements in the current zoning bylaw, but the applicant proposes that all parking that is provided be located within an enclosed parking structure. A number of other development standards are also included in the draft zoning bylaw and will be reviewed as part of the evaluation of this proposal. Next slide, please. At this time, the following preliminary issues will be reviewed as part of this proposal. First of all, the appropriateness of the height and density on the site, the need for road improvements to ensure roads, intersections, and transit infrastructure are available to support the additional residents and traffic generated by future development, the appropriateness of one access point to the development, the adequacy of setbacks to ensure a comfortable pedestrian experience on sidewalks, as well as to protect the ability for adjacent land to be developed in an appropriate manner, the impact on the Hagerty Mansion and how this heritage resource can be celebrated, the appropriateness of the distance between the new towers, as well as the distance from the existing 27-story tower located on George Street North, and an assessment to ensure that the proposal conforms to relevant planning policies, including those related to Special Policy 3A. These issues and others that are raised as part of the review of this proposal will be addressed in a future recommendation report. Next slide, please. As well as addressing issues raised by residents and commenting departments and agencies, this application will be evaluated against existing provincial and municipal policies, including those found in the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region of Peel Official Plan, the City of Brampton Official Plan, and the Downtown Secondary Plan. Next slide, please. This slide indicates the steps that have occurred with respect to the review of this application and the future steps of the evaluation process. A notice of complete application was sent to the applicant on December 21st, 2021, and published in the Brampton Guardian. The application was then circulated to city departments and external agencies for comments. The notice of tonight's statutory public meeting under the Planning Act was sent out on December 29th, 2021, and published in the Brampton Guardian on January 6, 2022. And today we are at the public meeting part of this application. For the next steps, staff will continue to assess the application by analyzing and evaluating comments and issues that are raised at tonight's meeting by residents that make representation before the committee, as well as analyzing and evaluating comments that were received from submitted correspondence from residents, city departments, and external agencies. Once a comprehensive review has been completed, staff will prepare a recommendation report for consideration by council. As noted, any issues raised through the review of the application, including the issues raised this evening, will be addressed in a future recommendation report. Anyone who has provided their contact information at tonight's meeting or through correspondence relating to this file will be notified before the recommendation report is considered by council. Any decision that council makes in support of or in opposition to the proposal can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Next slide, please. The information report and correspondence associated with tonight's public meeting is available online at www.brampton.ca on the City Hall Meetings and Agendas page. This presentation will also be available online shortly. Again, my name is Carmen Caruso. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me or the applicant. The contact information is shown on this slide. This concludes my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do we have delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do. First, we have a delegation from the applicant, and that will be Dermot Sweeney and Lincoln Lowe on behalf of the applicant. And then following that, under item 6.3, we have 7 registered delegates. And under item 11.1, we have 50 pieces of correspondence for the committee to consider. So we'll start with the applicant presentation from Dermot and Lincoln. And we're just bringing your presentation up on the screen shortly. And once the presentation's up, Dermot and Lincoln, you can proceed, followed by the delegations, the 7 registered delegations.
Thank you. Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Since Carmen did a very thorough job on the planning, Lincoln will not be starting. I'll just jump right into the architecture. This is a view looking south and west from the northeast corner of George and Nelson. Looking back at the project on the corner. Okay, next please. On the site plan, you can see this was shown. Basically, there are 2 towers separated by a large public plaza and garden that surrounds the existing heritage building, which will be retained, restored, fixed up, and put back to work. Then pulled back, going east of the mansion on the corner is Tower 1 and its podium. Then there's a connecting podium. And then on the south side, the South Tower, which also sits on a podium. The North Tower and all its access to Nelson Street and George is all animated with retail. We're widening the sidewalks and pulling back, well back from the corner to allow for a good sized public realm sidewalk and trees on the corner at George Street, which is extremely tight today. Basically, all sidewalks will be widened. And trees planted wherever possible, and we're working with Brampton and their standards together with our landscape architect to do so. Okay, next. This is that view I was talking about. So you're seeing the podium in the goldish color. We're still working, obviously, on materiality and want to get through and into the zoning long before SPA, but start to engage with the city as well. We have identified locations to animate the street and do that traditionally on George Street and Nelson. And then as we go around, I will show you what we're going to do on Elizabeth. But you'll see here the diagram on the right. The property line is in blue that actually carries out to the curb. We're pulling the building well back from the corner and allowing ourselves approximately 6 meters at the corner, which is about 20 feet to get around the corner. Right now, it's very difficult to do so, but that will be improved, and we're continuing to work with the city staff on the public realm all the way around the building. Next, please. This is a view looking north up George Street at the new hotel entry. The hotel is a top 5 brand internationally. Unfortunately, I can't mention who yet until they move forward with an agreement. But they're excited. It's currently looking to be between 150 and 210 rooms, and they will be a full-service hotel with food and beverage and very, very good long-term stay and short-term stay rooms. Next, please. This is a view from the north and east of the site looking southwest. The original mansion, which is there, it has been altered over time. We're going to do what we can to bring it back to its original condition, create a series of gardens around it, and also an open plaza. The Tower 2, which is on the right, is the South Tower. We're looking in the gold portion behind the mansion, the gold or bronze color of wall. We're looking at opportunities to work with the artist community in Brampton. And hoping to put the house back to work for the arts communities as well. Next, please. This is another view of the mansion. The mansion itself used to actually, its front faced George Street as opposed to Elizabeth. In the reconstruction of the city grid, that was altered. And this was then converted into an apartment building, which it is today. We're putting it back to its original grandeur and fixing up, replacing things like turrets and restoring the masonry and the roofs and the interiors as much as humanly possible. This is a view of that plaza between the new building and the existing. Next, please. Another view looking north at the old building, the old mansion, and the new building on the right. Be a large open plaza. Hopefully we will bring lots of uses to the home, which come out to the outside, cafes, tea rooms, and of course, food and beverage and other retail on the other side. Next, please. This is a view looking up along Elizabeth Street. This side of the public realm will be a widened sidewalk and gardens, but also feature residential entries, not retail, and residential townhomes. across from the housing across the street. Next, please. We are going through a very detailed stakeholder engagement process where we have met with a number of downtown stakeholders, including the Brampton BIA, the Beehive, Ryerson, Metrolinx, Algoma. We've had a lot to do with Callow and talked to Inzola and others in the core, and we will continue to do so. And I would like to say to the public that we are setting up a website and you can contact us very easily, and we would be happy to sit down and go through the project in more detail and speak to anything you would like to, any concern you may have. Next. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, the next delegation is an audio delegation from Maria Manny, and I'm going to just queue it up here in a moment. And here is Maria Manny's delegation.
Hello. This voice message is regarding application file number OZS 2021-0053. My name is Maria Manny. I'm a condo owner at the Renaissance Condominium on 9 George Street North, and I'm a homeowner at 122 Mill Street South. So my submission is to oppose this application. Over the last couple of years, we've received notifications to build a variety of residential buildings, 2, 3, 13, 14-story buildings on this Elizabeth Street block. Then another notice came along, this time with taller buildings. All we've seen are attempts by developers to guide the vision of growth in our downtown core. What we should be seeing is a planned vision for the present and for the future of our downtown. Guidelines put forth by my city's planners and not by those of the developers. We've also seen 20, 30, 40-year growth plans for the city. In all of these iterations, have we ever stepped back and looked at the skylines created in the city's hubs, the ones to the north, the south, the west and the east, along the Queen Street and the Kennedy Road corridors, all converging into our downtown core? I read a recent study in urban design, and it found that a city's skyline to be an intriguing and important aspect of our city's built form. For me, this is true. I look at this current application, and it proposes 2 tall towers that encroach on the skyline of the downtown core, burdening its infrastructure with the density and congestion that will follow. Again, this is my opinion. I suggest we take the time now to step back and look at the skyline we want. Let's look at a plan, decide that it's attractive and that it sends positive messages about our city, and then implement the guidelines to follow that plan. Yes, it will take time, but then the right development projects will come along. That's my hope for downtown Brampton. Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Chair, the next delegation is, the registered delegation is Alfred Shin. We do not see Alfred in the meeting, so we will move on. The next delegation is Peter Bailey. So Tammy, can you bring in Peter Bailey, please? And Peter, you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. So Peter, you can go ahead and unmute your mic. You're in the session now. Good evening, Peter.
Okay, you can hear me? Yeah?
Yep. Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Oh, terrific. Hello, Peter Fay, and thank you very much for helping us get through this and be part of this. And I also want to say greetings to members of council that are attending tonight, in particular Chairman Medeiros and my councilors for 1 and 5, Councilor Rowena Santos and Paul Vincente. Greetings to everyone. I'm here. I'm wearing two hats tonight. Actually, I'm speaking as the president of the condo board at PSCC 917, which is the Renaissance at 9 George Street North. So I'm wearing that hat. Plus, also, I've asked if I could speak as a resident, as an owner of that location. So, if possible, I'm going to try and just put them both together. The one section will be very short, and then I'll resort to the other hat I'm wearing. So, wearing the hat as representing PSCC 917, we have contacted an urban planner who we've sent various documents to review, and we may consult further with them and reserve the right to report back to this committee and to council or to the council directly. So you'll hear more from us in that capacity in the near future. So that move on from that wearing that hat to wearing my hat as a resident and owner at the Renaissance, also as a Brampton taxpayer, excuse me, and as constituents for wards 1 and 5. I was going to do some greeting with the planning committee from Malone, Gibbons, and Parsons, but I don't think they're here. But I want to say hello to Mr. Dermot Sweeney, who actually thank you for your presentation. It was interesting. You spoke to a good friend of mine a few months back, and that person who I trust her opinion very, very dearly said that you were a nice guy. So that was that's all I needed to hear from him. And so we'll continue with that in mind. So nice to meet you, Mr. Sweeney, if I can call you Dermot.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, I can really address a number of topics of concern throughout the entire downtown. But one very recent development that I think has changed everything in how we look at downtown right now is the Rogers Communications, the MCO, municipal zoning order that came out just recently. It was Glenn Schnarr and Associates that put together that package. And this is huge. That should in itself, I would think, and I can't speak on behalf of anyone but myself, but I think that would be enough for all the participants in this proposal to actually poll interest in their current proposal and develop a new one that will take into consideration the built form of the showpiece coming to the downtown, and that being the new Rogers development. The character and the compatibility, even the facades, I believe are going to have to conform to allow the new focal point, which is going to be the Rogers building, as the new gateway into Brampton. The landmark, both Rogers and Brampton want to be visible on all sides and for a long distance. I don't think the current proposal before us, it literally blocks out half of the site that Rogers is planning on using and would completely hide them from public view. And I don't think Rogers Communications wants that. They want to be seen. Their logo is their advertising. It's who they are. And I think they deserve to have our full attention, our full assistance in developing themselves as a catalyst for other development in the downtown. As you know, a good planner has to take into consideration the massing, the height transition, step backs, which you've already mentioned. But you didn't mention angular plane, the setbacks you did talk about. Step back and setback, two different things, including much larger sidewalks, which you talked on, bicycle lanes, and the Rogers design is demanding all those things. It will be demanding. The community around them is in sync with their proposals. The fine grain and the urban fabric of the downtown must be in sync. the public realm must be the priority throughout the downtown. And I don't see in the current proposal before us any consideration for the public realm.
Peter, you are at 5 minutes, so if you could
Okay,
please wrap
I'll
up.
be summing up pretty quickly. So I don't doubt the creativity of architects and urban planners to design something to be proud of, a place where even they would live. So please, Mr. Sweeney, I would ask you to consider taking another look at this and talking to your people and talking to the people at Rogers and see what it is they want. And as another person that you should be talking to is your closest neighbor, which is the residents of the Renaissance at 9 George Street North. So thank you very much, and I won't take up any more of your time. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. The next delegation is from Richard Dusk. Richard, you are in the session. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Please proceed.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Give you a little background. I was president owner of computer companies for 25 years. I am presently a professional real estate representative, 18 years. This is to address to Mayor Brown, Walina Santos, and Paul Valenci, and all councillors, and especially residents of Brampton. I will divide my discussion into 3 parts: purpose, facts, and conclusion. The purpose is to question the granting to Greenwood Corporation going by the name of Elizabeth/George Holdings Inc. and the granting of the proposed housing project facilities at the property located at 28 Elizabeth Street North, 31 and 33 George Street North, and 25 and 27 Nelson Street West. This is to be proposed for the use of affordable housing. Fact. Framework for the pilot project was endorsed by the Regional Council on July 9th, 2020. As reported in the Regional County Council meeting dated 2021-11-11, the pilot program called for applications and was held between May 13 and July 12th, 2021. Out of 80 interested parties, the region received 10 applications, of which 6 were evaluated. But during this time, fact, property at 28 Elizabeth Street North, which makes up most of the northern block of properties, was purchased on September the 1st, 2020 for $9,500,000 by Elizabeth George Holdings, Inc., 9 months before a call for applications. 24 Elizabeth Street North was purchased on July 8th, right in the middle of the supposed call for applications, 2021 for $1,315,940. 22nd Elizabeth Street North was purchased on July 8th again, 2021 for $1,381,980, and 20 Elizabeth Street North was purchased on July 8th, 2021 for $1,883,410, and 18 Elizabeth Street North was purchased on July 8th, 2021 for $1,418,670. This is public knowledge. These 4 properties were made while the call for applications were being held between May 31st and July 12th. The total purchase price for these properties is $15,500,000. We have seen trucks now doing soil tests on these locations. Why would the developer invest in these properties, do soil tests before and during the granting of this project, and supposedly this meeting to evaluate if the zoning should be changed? Seems like it's a completed situation. The urban design brief, Malone Given Parsons Limited, urban planner, did this for Greenwood Corporation Sweeney Holdings Limited under the guise of Elizabeth George Holdings Inc. Greenland Corp hired and paid Malone Given Parsons to do this study. The study is skewed in favor of the developer, but I will give one example of the flaws in the report. There are many. The report said the project provides a parking ratio of 0.65 per residential unit As of December 2021, the average Canadian household had 1.5 cars, including SUVs and pickups. Also, I refer to a document by technical paper number 9, Parking and Loading Standards Review, City of Brampton Comprehensive Zoning by Bylaw Review. Bylaw Review shows that even if you have a one-bedroom apartment, you require at least a 1.1% or car to be able to function in this area. This is ludicrous for the amount that is being shown up on there. Why? Well, you know what? You can't go too deep in the ground here because it's a water table. I request, okay, wait a second here. Does this mean that the report is skewed the information in favor of the lack of constructing enough parking spaces because of the floodplain, limiting an underground parking garage? These are questions that have to be addressed and answered. When the 9 George Street property was built, they first wanted to put 5 underground parking spots. They couldn't, because after you went down 20 feet, you hit water. We have sump pumps in our second floor basement parking lot to take out the water constantly. When the Rose was built, go down 20 feet, they hit water. There is a stream running around this area, and if you're going to put or try to put this type of development in there, heaven forbid what will happen when that stream comes up and starts eating away at the foundations.
Richard,
I request and demand that
you've hit your 5 minutes. If you could wrap up, please.
Yeah, I will. Okay. I request and demand that the community have the availability to study this project in more depth review, then a short 15 days allowed, and at least 60 days for a proper assessment of information. Why were we being forced to respond to this in 15 days? I want to hit one other point here. I think it's critical. You want to put in rental houses. That's a cash cow to the developer. The developer will make in 10 years a surprising $300,000 per unit from a household, which would amount to $231,380,000. Instead of doing rental, do it rent to own, so that that individual family has something to show for their investment at the end of the period. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Our next delegation is from Gary Branning. It's a video delegation, and it is a video without sound, but I'm going to play it, and just for committee's reference is Mr. Branning has submitted correspondence which is included in the agenda package this evening. So there is no sound, members of committee. It's just a video from, I believe it's his unit. Mr. Chair, that's that delegation. And finally, we have or not finally, my apologies, we have Darren Sims, who's a registered delegate. And Darren, I believe you're on the telephone. We've unmuted your mic. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee. Please proceed. Darren, are you able to proceed? Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great, thank you. Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak at this meeting. I'm just speaking on behalf of my family. We live in the Renaissance condominium in downtown Brampton, and we're an original owner, intending for this to be our forever home. Sadly, I have to speak because I do have a condo unit facing north. The video that was just shown is pretty much a carbon copy of my beautiful view from the balcony, which, if this proposed plan does in fact go through, will be taken away from my wife, my son, and I. In fact, these two towers would dwarf our building, and we would spend at least 80 to 90% of the day in the shade. This would affect our quality of life. This would affect our mental health. This would be unfortunate for many things, those being the most for us. I'm just thankful that I have this opportunity to speak to everyone. The gentleman who was going through the photos, the very nice photos, kept speaking so much of how nice things will look. But I don't think that gentleman was looking at my perspective of having to look into somebody else's window every day in the morning instead of being able to wake up and look in the distance and see the escarpment. I'm very concerned about the traffic that will bottleneck. I know a lot of talk has been made about widening streets, but there are times even now that I find it difficult getting my car out of the parking lot and into the work, going to work. I really hope that something maybe a little smaller, something something that would consider people who have called this part of Brampton their home for many years. I would encourage some sort of redevelopment plan put in place. It seems to me that this came really quickly to myself and the other owners in this building. So I don't really have that much else to say other than my family and I will be impacted not only the way that I described, but also financially. And I'm hoping that something will happen that this won't come to be. But thank you for hearing me out. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Darren. Our next delegation is from Sylvia Roberts. Sylvia, you can unmute your mic and you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. I've spent a lot of time looking through the various files of this, planning justification and traffic impact study. Overall, it seems like it would be a net benefit to the city. I absolutely understand the concerns from residents of 9 George. So I looked at the traffic impact study. There are some weird things. The ITE trip generation they use is treating it like the high-rises are, the residential component is in suburban sprawl, which means they're significantly overestimating the amount of auto trips. The city should probably provide direction to applicants for the downtown that instead of using that, they can use the dense multi-use urban, which accounts for downtown being a more walkable and transported environment. The Transportation Tomorrow survey blocks that they're using are for the downtown, which on its face sounds like it makes sense, but the problem is it includes a number of number of single detached units. The comparison for the Transportation Tomorrow survey stuff should probably be using block 3357, which is the case action block in Bramalea, because its high-rise nature in close proximity to the transit terminal in commercial is a better match than single detached housing downtown. So this is all to say that the estimates in the traffic impact survey for this project aren't the issue. The traffic impact study does, however, raise a number of significant issues about the city's overall planning for downtown. So I looked at their peak hour demand for Main Street North heading southbound, and it shows that pre-pandemic, the peak hour was over 900, which in the previous layout of having 2 peak hour lanes because parking was banned on Main during peak hours was more than sufficient. However, if the city is widening Main Street to put in sidewalks and stuff, the existing pre-pandemic demand is over 130% of what a 2-lane configuration can handle, which is deeply concerning. The issue for Main Street on the coming into the downtown on Main Street is there's no real alternative to avoid Main Street, because so west of Main Street you have Mill Street, which crosses it, but it's at grade, which means when trains are running it gets shut down, and the next closest crossing that is grade separated is McLaughlin. So if you're attempting to go to the downtown from the north side, either you take Main Street north, southbound, or you have to go from McLaughlin and on Queen. The city previously in the secondary plan had planned to extend McMurtry north to Pleasant View as a grade separated crossing. And between this and the Rogers development, if you want to reduce the number of lanes in the downtown, it will be absolutely necessary to complete that crossing. The other issue is, even if you do that, there still won't be enough capacity. If the city wants this in the Rogers thing, you're going to have to turn downtown into a transit mall and move lanes between Nelson and Wellington, specifically for the buses, because there's physically not a way to meet the demand for transportation for the downtown, given how many people the city wants to add. And I just have not seen that in proposals. There are a number of ways the city can work on reducing car demand from this development. So one of the things is, in Brampton, there are often times where you will kind of need a car. You can potentially do it via transit, but it can be very difficult otherwise. The city could remedy this by in the Nelson Garage, which is less than a 200-meter walk from one of the entrances of this, to have car sharing. So if you need a car, you can just walk 200 meters to the Nelson Garage and rent it by the hour, like if you need to do grocery runs or something. That would reduce the demand for cars in this development. The city should also really look at removing the overnight parking ban in the city-owned parking garages. The parking study shows that there's excess capacity pre-pandemic of 700 parking spaces in the downtown. And if residents could, people who are living downtown could rent parking spaces in the city facilities, instead of the developer having to build parking spaces that aren't needed, the city could make money on the permits and also save a significant amount of money on the parking spaces. When you have as few parking spaces as this, the developer, given how the parking is set up, if you want a parking space in this building, you're probably going to have to pay at least 50 grand for it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's quite a bit more than that, not out of the developer trying to make a huge amount of money, but just structured parking is actually extremely expensive to build. And the city allowing resident parking in the city's parking garages could save everyone involved a lot of money.
Sylvia, you've reached 5 minutes. If you could wrap up.
Thank you. So the city needs to actually do a comprehensive look at the downtown for the traffic study, because the background traffic is a mess, and as it's with the current city plans for transportation in the downtown can't handle additional development. So there needs to be a comprehensive transportation plan for the downtown if you want to have developments like this in the Rogers facility added. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you, Sylvia. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the delegations. Alfred Shin was trying to connect, but has been unable to connect, so you can proceed. There is just the correspondence to receive.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. I do have a motion. Members of the committee, are there any questions or comments? I see none, and I do have a motion moved by Councilor Vicente to approve the staff report recommendations and applicant delegations, and we will take it as read. Anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion carries. Our next item is item 5.2, application to amend the official plan, WSP Canada Infrastructure Ontario Ward 3 to permit industrial uses both sides of Tompkin Road. And I will welcome Angelo Umbrico from our Development, Planning, Building, and Economic Development Department. Welcome, Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So good evening, everyone. Mr. Chair, committee members, staff, and members of the public. My name is Angelo Umbrico, and I am the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by WSP Canada Inc., prepared on behalf of Infrastructure Ontario. Next slide, please. The subject property is located within Ward 3 and is situated on Tompkin Road, north of Highway 407. The property is currently vacant and has direct frontage onto Highway 407. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to amend the official plan and the secondary plan to facilitate the future development of the lands for industrial uses. The subject property is currently designated as provincial highways in the official plan and designated as public use area / road under the province's Parkway Belt West plan. The lands have since been confirmed by the Ministry of Transportation as excess to the requirements of the Highway 407, and the province is seeking an amendment to the official plan to facilitate the future development of the site. It is the expectation that the lands would be offered for sale by the province, and the purchaser of the lands would submit a further application for the development of this site. This would include a zoning bylaw amendment where needed, site plan applications, and potentially a plan of subdivision. No actual development is being proposed at this time. Next slide, please. The applicant has submitted a preliminary concept plan. This concept plan does not represent a formal development proposal, but rather a demonstration plan of how this site can be developed, including access and site configuration. As mentioned in the previous slide, there is no development being proposed at this time, and the purchaser will be required to submit further development applications to the city for review. Next slide, please. This map shows properties within 240 meters of the proposed development. Owners of these properties would have received a notice by direct mail with respect to the proposal. Notice was also provided in the Brampton Guardian newspaper and on the City of Brampton website. Next slide, please. This slide shows an aerial view of the subject property. As you can see, it is located on both sides of Tompkin Road, north of Highway 407. As noted, the site is currently vacant and has direct frontage onto Highway 407. To the north, we have existing employment lands. To the south, Highway 407 and a small portion of Etobicoke Creek, as well as a multi-use trail and parking lot. To the east, we have Dixie Road and more existing employment lands. And to the west, we have Highway 410 and more existing employment lands. Next slide, please. The subject property is currently designated provincial highways and open space in the official plan. An amendment to the official plan is required to permit the industrial uses while adding the open space designation for areas with natural heritage features. The industrial designation would permit the development of light to heavy industrial uses such as manufacturing, processing, repair and service, and warehousing and distribution. Next slide, please. The property is located within the Steeles and 410 Highway 410 secondary plan, but is not currently designated within it. An amendment to the secondary plan is required to permit the proposed General Employment 1 use. Next slide, please. The subject property is currently zoned agricultural, industrial, and floodplain. A future zoning bylaw amendment application will be required for parts of the property. Next slide, please. There are a few items that staff are currently reviewing on this file. The subject property currently does not have access from Tompkin Road or West Creek Boulevard. The potential options for proposed access are limited due to distance constraints from the Highway 407 overpass structure, as well as an existing drainage channel and limited right-of-way available on Tompkin Road. The site also contains natural heritage features and a portion of the watercourse from the Etobicoke Creek. The proposed development and studies will need to appropriately delineate regional floodlines and development buffers to the satisfaction of the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. Next slide, please. Prior to finalizing recommendations to Council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act, Provincial Policy Statement, conformity with the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region of Peel Official Plan, and the City of Brampton Official Plan. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of where we currently are in the review of this application. A notice of complete application was sent to the applicant on November 5th, 2021. The application has since been circulated to city departments as well as other agencies for technical comments. Notice of the public meeting was given to property owners in the vicinity of the property and published in the newspaper on the city's website. We are now at the public meeting stage. Committee members and staff are here to listen to any feedback, and after tonight's meeting, comments received from city departments, agencies, members of the public, and matters raised through the public delegations will be reviewed and evaluated. The proposal will be further assessed against the provincial policy statement, growth plan, regional official plan, and the city's official plan and secondary plan. Once the analysis and evaluation is complete, staff will return to the Planning and Development Committee with a recommendation report. The recommendation report will address all matters raised by members of the public, external agencies, and other city departments. Anyone that has provided their contact information with respect to this application will be advised when the recommendation report will be considered by the committee. Once City Council makes a decision on the application, there is an opportunity to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. Next slide, please. The report associated with tonight's meeting is available online, and the presentation will be made available online shortly. Again, my name is Angelo Ambrico, and my contact information is posted on the screen. Also on the screen is the contact information of the applicant, Natalie Boudram of WSP Canada Inc. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do we have any delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a presentation from the applicant, Natalie Boudram from WSP Canada on behalf of the property owner, Infrastructure Ontario, is present for a presentation, and also representatives from Infrastructure Ontario are present should the committee have questions. So Natalie, you can proceed with your presentation. We're just going to bring it up momentarily. So Natalie, you can proceed.
Good evening, Chair Medeiros and members of the Planning and Development Committee, members of the public. My name is Natalie Boudram. I am a planning project manager at WSP. I am a registered professional planner in the province of Ontario and a full member of the Canadian Institute of Planners. I am representing our client, Infrastructure Ontario. Staff from Infrastructure Ontario are available virtually at this meeting to respond to questions following the presentation as needed. As described by the city planner, Angelo Ambrico, we are applying for an official plan amendment to permit future employment uses and open space on the subject lands. Next slide. Next slide. The subject lands are divided into Site A and Site B, as explained earlier. There is frontage on Tompkin Road, where access would be foreseeable. Highway 407 is to the east, and existing employment uses are to the west. As you can see, the subject lands are remnant to the Highway 407 right-of-way, and the subject lands are in excess to the province's needs. The subject lands are currently designated in the OP, the official plan, to permit provincial highways and open space. Subject lands have no designation currently. The applicable Highway 410 and Steel secondary plan as mentioned. Infrastructure Ontario intends to designate the lands to permit future employment uses, just like the lands adjacent to the properties, and sell it onto the market, while protecting the existing natural areas with an open space designation. The future purchasers will need to apply for the zoning bylaw amendment and the site plan approval. As mentioned, no development is proposed at this time. Next slide. So you can see here the Site A and Site B on either side of the highway as described. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. The proposed official plan amendment is supported by provincial policy and is consistent with the objectives of the plans. In the provincial policy statement, the subject lands are located within the built boundary and the settlement area. in the provincial growth plan is located within a strategic growth area and supports provincially significant employment zone. As access to the Highway 407, the province's internal process is underway to remove the lands from the Parkway West Belt Plan. Next slide. For planning justification, in terms of the region official plan, the lands are located within the region's urban system. And as mentioned, we are applying for an official plan amendment to permit future uses of employment and open space on the subject lands. Next slide. As you can see here, we've submitted a variety of studies, and we have demonstrated that the proposed official plan amendment is technically supported. Next slide. Next slide. As mentioned, in terms of process, today we're at the statutory public meeting, so we will welcome your feedback. We're currently reviewing and addressing staff and agency comments. When this process is complete, we'll be seeking council approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no other delegations, public delegations on this item, but there is correspondence listed under 11.2 in regard to this item.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. And members of the committee, are there any questions for clarification? I see none, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman to approve the staff report recommendations in applicant delegation, and we will take it as read. Anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion now carries. Our next item is item 5.3, application to amend the official plan in zoning bylaw, Weston Consulting. 3 of the 4 buildings, 1-story retail structures. The structure at the northwest corner of the subject property will be 2 stories with local retail and grade on office of the 2nd level. And I will hand it over to Alex.
Good evening, Chair, committee members, staff, and members of public. My name is Alex Seppi. I'm the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by Weston Consulting on behalf of Dr. Bhupinder Kanjura. Next slide, please. Oh, next slide. Thank you. So the subject property is located within Ward 10 on the eastern part of Brampton. Precisely, it's located at the southeast corner of Gorway Drive and Mayfield Road, as seen on the slide above. Next slide, please. So the applicant is proposing to construct 4 commercial buildings. 3 of the 4 buildings will be 1 story. The building in the northwest corner of the site will be 2 stories with retail at grade and office on the 2nd floor. In total, there's approximately 1,161 square meters of gross floor area of office uses and approximately 3,725 square meters gross floor area of retail uses. The development proposes 225 parking spaces, 15 bicycle parking spaces. There's 2 points of vehicular access. One point of access is proposed from Gorway Drive, the other from Mayfield Road. Important to note, building A4, which would be the southeast building shown, there is a proposed drive-through at the southern and western parts of that building. Next slide, please. Here you can see a development rendering. So this would be looking southerly, at the northern frontage of the proposed development. So we're looking south right now from Mayfield Road. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So this map shows properties within 240 meters of the proposed development. Owners of these properties would have received notice by direct mail with respect to the proposal. Notice was also provided in the Brampton Guardian newspaper and on the City of Brampton website. I have received correspondence from neighboring properties which have been appended to this agenda. Next slide. So as mentioned before, the site is located at the southeast corner of Mayfield Road and Gorway Drive.
The surrounding land uses include to the north, there's an auto service and body shop. There's also single detached residential and agricultural uses further to the north, located in the town of Caledon. To the south is primarily estate residential homes. To the east is estate residential and single detached homes, as well as open space. To the west, it's currently under construction. There is a commercial development, as well as single detached residential homes. Next slide. So in the pictures here, you can see the aforementioned commercial development directly west of the proposed site. This is a commercial development at the southwest corner of Mayfield Road and Gorway Drive. At this site, the applicant's proposing 4 commercial buildings. It's currently being built or constructed. This was approved through SP 19040.000. Next slide. So the subject property is designated estate residential in the City of Brampton official plan. An amendment to the official plan is required to permit the proposed development. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. The property is located within the Toronto Gore Rural Estate Secondary Plan, that's known as SPA 26. The city undertook the Toronto Gore Density Policy Review to assess a secondary plan area. There is currently no approved secondary plan at this time. The study is on hold until an in-person meeting can be held. Next slide. So there currently are 2 parcels at the proposed development. 6539 Mayfield Road is zoned agricultural A, so that's properly most east of the subject site. 11937 Gorway Drive is zoned residential rural estate 2, RE2, in the City of Brampton zoning bylaw 270/2004. An amendment to the zoning bylaw will be required to permit the proposed development. Next slide. Thank you. So current items under review. The city staff are reviewing the site layout to ensure high quality design and connectivity. We're also working with the applicant to refine the sustainability summary to ensure it meets the City of Brampton minimum thresholds. We are reviewing the site to ensure that the massing and height are appropriate for the area. City staff are also looking at site landscaping to buffer the proposed development from abutting residential homes. Lastly, city staff are reviewing the appropriateness of the drive-through proposed at building A4, so that's southwest portion of the site, or southeast portion of the site, sorry. Next slide, please. So prior to finalizing recommendations to council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act, provincial policy statement, conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal official plan, and the City of Brampton official plan. Next slide. So this slide shows where staff are in the review of this application. The application has been circulated to city departments as well as other agencies for technical comments. Notice of the public meeting was given to property owners in the vicinity of the property and published in the newspaper and on the city's website. We are now at the public meeting stage. Committee members and staff are here to listen to any feedback from residents or those concerned and that have provided comments. After today's public meeting, comments received from city departments, agencies, members of the public, and matters raised through the public delegations will be reviewed and evaluated. The proposal will be further assessed against the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, the region appeal official plan, the city's official plan, and secondary plan. Once the analysis and evaluation is complete, staff will return to the Planning and Development Committee with a recommendation report. The recommendation report will address all matters raised by members of the public, external agencies, and other city departments. Anyone that provided their contact information with respect to this application will be advised when the recommendation report will be considered by the committee. Once City Council makes a decision on the application, there is an opportunity to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. Next slide. So the report associated with tonight's meeting is available online, and the presentation will be online shortly. Again, my name is Alex Seppi. My contact information is posted on the screen. Also on the screen is the contact information of the applicant, Alethea Cacao from Weston Consulting. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do we have any delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do. First, we have a presentation from Alethea Cacao from Weston Consulting, who'll be presenting on behalf of the applicant, and that would then be followed by, I believe we have 2 registered delegates. There may be a third. So Alethea, you are in the session. We're going to bring up your presentation, and you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Please proceed. Oh, Alfia, I think your mic is muted.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Alfia Kakal, and I'm a planner at Weston Consulting. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the client today. I'd like to start my presentation with a short video that's been prepared, and I'm wondering if the person that's in control of the presentation can click on the link at the bottom of the screen.
So sorry, Alfia, we weren't apprised that we'd have to go to a link, so that may not work.
Okay, not a problem. That's okay. It was a 20-minute rendering that had been prepared to sort of help the council and members of the public sort of walk through the proposed development. But that's okay. We can move on to the next slide. Okay. So very briefly, the subject lands are currently zoned agriculture and estate residential. However, as you can see from this aerial rendering, the surrounding context is highly urbanized. There is a high concentration of residential, commercial, and community uses in close proximity to the site, and the need for commercial space to serve this growing community has never been greater. Next slide. Just to reiterate some of the site statistics, approximately 4,900 square meters, which is roughly 53,000 square feet of commercial space, is being proposed in a primarily single-story format with 225 parking spaces. Next slide. Just to focus in a little bit on the design features, the design principles that inform the site configuration prioritize walkability and the enhancement of the public realm. To that extent, road widenings have been provided along both Mayfield Road and Gorway Drive to allow for improvements and urbanization of the intersection and enhance overall mobility in the area. Sidewalks and crosswalks have been provided through the site plan to allow for pedestrian connectivity with amenity features such as benches and public art included. There are also multiple vehicular access points to allow for smooth traffic flow. The buildings have been set close to the streets to provide a high degree of visibility along the regional roads. This helps to elevate the public realm while at the same time ensure that the greatest possible distance can be provided between the buildings and the adjacent residential homes. And lastly, at a height of 1 and 2 stories, the massing of the proposed building is respectful of the surrounding low-rise community. Next slide, please. So, landscape strips have been proposed along Mayfield Road and Gorway Drive. Plantings have also been included on traffic islands to break up the asphalt. And additionally, a vegetative buffer framed by a 2.2 meters, so that's roughly 7 foot high masonry fence is proposed along the south and east property line to provide adequate screening to the adjacent residents. And the tree species that has been selected for the buffer are known to grow to a height of 42 feet and will completely screen the commercial buildings from the adjacent residential lots. Next slide, please. In terms of policy context, there's a strong rationale to support the proposed development. Mayfield Road is slated to be expanded to a 7-lane highway to improve connections specifically to the industrial uses in Bolton. The proposed development will maximize investments being made in this infrastructure and thereby meet larger economic goals and objectives. The visibility and accessibility that this corner will receive is therefore best suited for a commercial use. Second, the proposed development contributes to complete communities. The introduction of commercial uses will diversify the predominantly residential land use fabric, whereby it will now be possible to access amenities and services through active transportation modes. Thirdly, the proposed development will increase employment and entrepreneurship opportunities. The provincial mandate for maintaining and enhancing employment lands is well recognized, and the proposed development will contribute to meeting these employment targets. And lastly, the subject lands are currently designated estate residential in the city's OP. This designation is recognized as being reflective of historic development trends that are no longer in line with the current policy framework. To that extent, the draft Toronto-Gore Density Review did recommend that sites with access to arterial roads and unique locational characteristics be redesignated residential to permit intensification and a mix of uses. Next slide, please. So the applications for this proposal have been submitted in accordance with the Planning Act and have been deemed complete. All supporting studies required to ensure the development is appropriately designed and serviced were submitted. Additionally, a market study was also submitted as part of the application to assess the demand and supply for commercial space in the site's vicinity. And the study concluded that the current demand exceeds existing and planned supply. Next slide, please. As part of the studies submitted, impact assessments were also conducted to address concerns related to noise, traffic, and privacy. It has been demonstrated that noise levels will remain within acceptable limits and that there is sufficient capacity in the boundary roads to receive additional anticipated traffic volumes without causing congestion, queuing, or delays. And lastly, the site has been designed to ensure privacy and quiet enjoyment expectations of surrounding residents are maintained. In fact, it can be argued that the proposed development will help to screen neighboring residents from truck and trailer traffic that is anticipated to traverse the intersection once the roadway improvements on Mayfield are in place. Next slide, please. On a final note, I'd like to point out that there is a distance of 162 feet, which is roughly 50 meters, between the east property line and the proposed buildings. This separation distance, including the proposed landscape buffer and masonry wall, are strong design features and considered more than adequate to mitigate impacts. The second rendering on the slide here shows a perspective view from the neighboring home looking into the proposed development. Due to the separation distance being provided and the buffering, the proposed buildings will be entirely covered from view for any individual that may be sitting or standing in their side yard. On that basis, it is my opinion that this development is appropriate and the negative impacts have been accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfia. And Mr. Chair, before we go to public delegations, we're going to try and see if we can play the video rendering, I think, that you mentioned, Alfia. So we'll just see if we can cue that up.
That would be excellent. Thank you.
So you can go ahead, Charlotte. We won't have audio, but at least you'll have video. Thank you. So we have two registered delegates for this evening's meeting. The first is Augustine Medella. Augustine, welcome, and you can unmute your mic, and you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Good evening, Chairman, and good evening to all the people that are listening, the residents of Brampton and the committee members. I just want to thank you guys for giving me a space to speak today. My name is Augustine Medella. I'm a young entrepreneur based out of Brampton, and I actually have interest in acquiring one of these units in this proposed development myself. So I just made a small presentation today to show my support for this proposed development today. So next slide, please. Okay, I just want to take you guys back to the year 2004 and discuss in regards to the bylaws 270-2004 and in regards to the property 11937 Gorway Drive and 6539 Mayfield Road. So in regards to the bylaws, both of these properties are permitted for non-agricultural uses at the present in 2004, such as they can be used from anything from a kennel, animal hospital, to even a cemetery. So next slide, please. So let me give you guys an idea of what the roads were like. So in 2004, Mayfield Road was a single lane going both ways with light traffic, and Gorway likewise was also a single lane going both ways, but with very light traffic. Next slide, please. So in 2004, the infrastructure available for the people around were well water, septic tanks, and absolutely no municipal services were available. Next slide. And the population of Brampton was just shy of 430,000, so you're looking at 429,000 people. And the lands around Mayfield and Highway 10 were mostly just used for agricultural purposes at the given time. Next slide, please. So I'm going to bring you guys back to 2021. So fast forward to 2021 now. And the bylaws for these two properties still remain the same. Not a single thing has changed. So it still permits any use from a kennel and a vet hospital to even a cemetery. Next slide, please. However, the things that have expanded are the roads. So the Mayfield has already been approved to expand, and it's going to be a 3-lane road going both ways with an auxiliary lane and with significantly heavy traffic, and will be a major trucking route as well, which leaves you at 7 lanes on Mayfield. And Gorway Drive is going to be a 2-lane road going both ways with 1 auxiliary lane, which is going to leave you with heavy traffic as well. So that lands you at 7 lanes on Mayfield and 5 lanes going down Gorway. Next slide, please. Here we have a little diagram provided to us by the city. So you can see the 5 lanes that are approved for Gorway Drive that will be going down Gorway Drive. And I've added 7 lanes on Mayfield, which just to give you guys a visual representation of what that would essentially look like. Next slide, please. Here we have a graphic representation of the proposed development at the southeast corner of Gorway and Mayfield, and I've added in the 5 lanes as well over here on Gorway, just to give you guys a better idea of what it would look like on Gorway, and obviously the 7 lanes going down Mayfield as well, and you have a visual representation of exactly what that would entail. Next slide, please. So in 2021, obviously with this coming in, the infrastructure would improve significantly. You would have available municipal water and sewer services that will be available as well now. Next slide, please. And the population of Brampton is going to be just shy of 700,000, so 698,200 people in 2021. And the anticipated growth by 2051 is going to be another 300,000 people, which is going to be a 41% increase. And the lands around Mayfield and Highway 10 are presently being used for major auto dealerships. Next slide, please. So evidently, the only thing that would not grow in this situation is the available land. And the commercial development at sorry, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Thank you very much. The commercial development at Gorway and Mayfield is not only visionary and futuristic for the PL 2051 plan, but also by far the most logical and practical option. Next slide, please. So let's just take a moment and look at the logical approach. So logically speaking, the location of the 2-story building will provide a shield to the neighborhood from the heavy traffic of Mayfield Road, with it being a major truck route. The buildings will diffuse any sort of idle noise of the trucks at the red light stop of the intersection for up to 75 to 90 seconds. The tree line and the fence of the proposed plan will provide a better abutting view to rather than staring at the idling trucks at the intersection. And now we'll take a look at the practical approach. Next slide, please. Thank you. The population growth of Brampton is inevitable, with new immigrants making it a home every single year. People coming here to make lives for themselves. So the best utilization of this infrastructure as required by the provincial policy is the proposed commercial plaza. It will provide employment from 100 to 150 people, which will enable people to pay their bills and make a life for themselves. The taxes generated will help offset dollars invested in the expansion of roads, infrastructure, utilities, which would well be in the millions of dollars. The dollars recovered with taxes would help city to fund and expand other public services for the residents and the people of Brampton. Next slide, please. So, and to conclude, I just want to leave you guys with, ladies and gentlemen, with a few questions to ask yourselves today. Firstly, is the proposed development a good plan for the people of Brampton? Is the proposed development utilizing infrastructure to recover tax dollars that can be put to use to make Brampton a better place for the residents, whether it be funding schools, childcare, or even the police perhaps? Is asking to amend the outdated bylaw 2004 that permits a kennel, vet, or even a cemetery on the existing lands for the proposed development of logical and a practical choice? If you answer yes to even one of these questions above, I think your support is inevitable. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Augustine. The next delegation is from Bell Turna. Bell, You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this meeting and present the residents' view. A number of the residents of Lucinda Court have submitted written opposition to the proposal, and I'm sure that I speak on behalf of all of the residents, even those that have not provided a written submission, when I say that we believe the proposed redevelopment is against the public interest of both our community and the city of Brampton. I strongly disagree with Alfia Kakal's arguments in favor of the plaza, and in fact, it's even more concerning after viewing the proposal and the presentation that she's gone through. For some background, I'm a longtime resident. My family moved to Lucinda Court almost 20 years ago in 2003. And I think it's important to note that this is not a transitional community with high turnover. I personally plan to live here for the rest of my life and hand down my home to the next generation. And it's largely the same for a lot of the residents on the street. The residents on the street have moved to Lucinda Court specifically because of the peace and quiet of the 2-acre lots. The proposed property would be directly on the border of my property and a heritage home, which is next door to myself. And as I said, viewing the presentation, it's actually larger, this proposed plaza, larger and more imposing than I think we had originally anticipated. I don't believe that the buffer type of proposals that have been made would suffice. And the heritage home, which is at 4 Lucinda Court, is of significance to Brampton. It's noted as the Odlum House. It's circa 1862 and has a long and storied architectural and military history. In 2020, that heritage home was officially certified as a wildlife-friendly habitat by the Canadian Wildlife Federation. And this proposed redevelopment threatens to irreparably alter the wildlife-friendly habitat, the character of our beloved and unique home, negatively impact our quality of life and the market value of all of the properties on Lucinda Court. The Mayfield Arcadium Commercial Plaza has just been erected across the street from the proposed development, which has already resulted in obstructing views, excessive traffic, continuing construction issues, and having the overall effect of diminishing the quality of life of the residents of Lucinda Court. The property is currently zoned as residential and should remain residential to preserve the character and nature of these 2-acre estate lots, which is a unique community in Brampton and has been designated by the City of Brampton as the Toronto Gore Estate area. The City of Brampton itself has coined this area as an established Toronto Gore Estate residential community and has commissioned a study to identify the character defining elements of this residential community and to consider policy options to protect the character, and is considering developments only in undeveloped areas per its Toronto Gore Density Policy Review that was undertaken to define the character of our community and protect it for future generations. So the very intention of the city is to protect the nature and character of this community, which is part of the long-standing estate residential community. Allowing this proposed rezoning would irreparably alter the character and fly in the face of the city's own stated intentions to preserve the character of this residential community. There's also already been a significant change in the character of the wider neighborhood. At Airport Road and Countryside, there was originally a golf course, and now it's a densely populated suburb. The Mayfield Arcadium Plaza, which I referenced earlier, is being built across the road from the proposed development. And now this plaza is being proposed literally in our backyards. And from a community design perspective, you don't often in any well-designed communities see a plaza right behind estate homes. The character and nature of our property would be materially altered, and there would be a severe negative ramification of this commercial plaza bordering on our property. And I think it's very important to factor in the economic value to the city of this proposal. It makes very little sense to carve out the portion of this residential land for a commercial development when there's already a large new commercial plaza, the Mayfield Arcadium, directly across the road, and another existing commercial plaza directly in front of this land, and all along Mayfield. There's other lands available for commercial development. We believe that this proposed redevelopment of the properties is of very questionable economic and social value to both our community and the city of Brampton. There doesn't appear to be any real justification for these 2 residential 2-acre lots to be rezoned, given the multitude of other commercial properties, existing commercial properties, properties in development, or other vacant land all along Mayfield. including the Mayfield Arcadium right across the street and a new plaza at Gorway Drive and Countryside. There's also an existing commercially zoned property on the northeast side of Mayfield and Gorway that's primed for redevelopment. So if you do a site visit along this neighborhood, you'll see coming soon sign at every intersection for new plazas. There's no real reason to have a plaza here right behind a heritage home and behind 2-acre estate lots. This type of project can be undertaken at any other of those locations. In fact, the market impact study that was presented fails to adequately explain why existing commercially zoned land's not suitable. The commercial needs for future regional population are met by the existing commercial properties and commercial zoned land. Rezoning residential land in the middle.
5 minutes, if you can try and wrap up, please.
Okay, sure. So very quickly, I'll add that security and privacy is also a key concern. There's many young families, elderly residents, children living just adjacent to this property that's being proposed to be rezoned. And there's a number of questions that should be answered by the city before this type of proposal would be allowed, and we strongly oppose this proposal. Those questions are both Gorway and Mayfield are single lane roads. Adding a plaza to the east and west side of Gorway will only lead to amplifying traffic congestion and safety issues at an already busy intersection. Neither Gorway nor Mayfield has any sidewalk to allow for safe passage of pedestrians, and that's a very hazardous situation. Despite the construction of bike lanes and sidewalks along Countryside, neither of those can be accessed by Gorway, and they're not connected to Mayfield. We'd like to know what study or analysis has been done on the occupancy levels and services to be provided in existing plazas that would support a further commercial development in this particular area, and whether or not this plaza would be in compliance with bylaw requirements for heritage properties, given that it would be abutting a heritage property. So overall, I think we would strongly urge the committee to deny the rezoning applications put forth by Weston Consulting and to act in favor of the existing residents of Lucinda Court by rejecting this proposal. From an environmental impact perspective, we submit that there would be the elevation of the property would result in drainage issues. There's a number of drainage issues that have already occurred in this area, and there's a very key concern of drainage issues for all of the residents on the 2-acre lots abutting this proposed development as well. The Odlum home, which is a heritage home, would also be at risk, and as would the potential damage of the property and the home itself. And the quality of life and character of the neighborhood is at risk. In addition to the myriad of long-term detrimental impacts, there's the short-term harm to residents associated with continuing construction, and the residents have not moved into this peaceful, private, quiet community with wide open spaces to end up having a commercial plaza of this size and magnitude directly in their backyard. There's no strong argument in favor of putting a plaza at this particular location. We would urge the city to protect the nature of the 2-acre estate homes, which itself it has designed to be a unique community. I can go on, but I knew I had only 5 minutes, so I've rushed through. Happy to continue with more thoughts.
Thank you, Bill. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I would ask, I have 2 daughters sitting back here. They'd like to have 30 seconds each to just present their thoughts, if that's all right. I think it's important to hear from the residents, given that we do hear from all of the commercial developers in this area.
That's fine. More than happy. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. It'll be their first experience with city working, so thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Sophia Turner. I'm 11 years old and I want to oppose this plaza because it's detrimental to my family, my neighbors, and I. It very much decreases our property value because the house's location is beautiful right now, but putting a plaza very new to our house is really detrimental to the property value. There will be much more traffic and it will be very difficult to get anywhere, especially even out of my own street. As a child, I feel really unsafe knowing that there are strangers close by and could potentially harm me in some way. So in conclusion, I feel this plaza should not be built for many reasons, including the ones I spoke about today and many more. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, delegates. My name is Malia Turna, and I'm also here to oppose this plaza. This has been my home for the entirety of my life, and the nature of this area is to be safe, spacious, and quiet. But recently, plazas have been going up all over the area, and we need to put a stop to it. This plaza will decrease our area's property value and cause many significant issues. In conclusion, I believe that this plaza would be a detriment to us all. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for the courage to come forward. It's great to see young people active and really demonstrating their opinion. So thank you very much. We will now go on to members of the committee. Yes, sir.
Sorry, we do have one additional delegation.
Okay.
Which just came in from Ramandeep Graywall. Ramandeep is on the telephone only, so Tammy, if you can unmute call-in user number 2. Ramandeep, welcome. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for accommodating me. Apologies to all the members. I am having some technical difficulties. I'm joining by phone. I just want to say, first of all, that I reiterate and urge the committee and all the members to read all the submissions that have been put forward by my neighbors. Maybe it may not be apparent from some of the submissions that have made, although I do congratulate the 2 youngest residents here who've spoken up, and I urge you to consider the fact that this plaza will be built right directly in their backyard. A couple of things to note about the character of this area to supplement what my neighbor has already presented. This area is not only zoned as a residential estate, however, it is also bounded by a great many green zones. We urge the committee to really consider the impact that a plaza of this nature will have on all of the green zones, particularly the ravine and wooded areas that are abutting up to this property. Unlike the plaza that is going up across the street, the runoff area for this zone directly runs off into a green ravine area zone. It is one of the last green areas left in this neighborhood. We have already seen a significant change in the characteristic of the wildlife and of all of the natural habitat since the building of significant number of higher density residential homes on the other side of the ravine. We believe that'll be a detrimental, irreversible impact to a very unique ecosystem, some of the most unique ecosystems that are left in the city of Brampton. Moving over to safety and security. I was watching with great interest the young woman who was speaking on behalf of the developer, I believe, when she talked about the plans to widen the roads, to provide access, benches, sidewalks, etc. But it's interesting to note that as far as we've been aware, we are understanding that there are no plans currently to widen Gorway Road. All the members who are here should consider that Gorway is a single lane road in both directions. Currently, there is a plaza being constructed across the street from this proposed site. One side of Gorway has been blocked for several months, literally leaving one lane going both north and south, providing residents of our street no access to go southbound. I stand there every day and watch my son wait for the bus. The bus stops to pick him up, and all the cars line up in both directions, creating an extremely unsafe and hazardous area. Large machinery has been parked outside of our street for several months. We can only imagine that these issues will be exacerbated by a second plaza going up on the second side of the street without any official plans for the widening of the roads or any coordination with the timing as to when those roads may be widened, if at all, even if there is sufficient area for those zones to be widened. I also heard with great interest the submissions around the commercial viability and the need for greater commercial properties in this area. I commend the young man who spoke forward. We all support entrepreneurship. We think it's a great initiative. We would love to support young entrepreneurs in the community who are interested in starting up viable businesses that will be mutually beneficial to both the entrepreneurs and the community. However, we have seen with great interest that there are a great number of plazas going up in this area, the one immediately adjacent, the one on Countryside, as my neighbor mentioned, and a rather large and significant development on McVean Road. I would be surprised to understand that there is actually more need from a commercial viability perspective. I understand that the occupancy levels are still trailing for a specifically the larger development. And so we would like to follow very keenly this line of argument that there is actually a need for additional commercial development, particularly when just to the west of this intersection is a large, more appropriate intersection for commercial development, which is Airport and Mayfield Road. And one would think that a large, significant thoroughfare with a large accessway or a large thoroughfare such as Airport Road would be the most viable area for commercial development. Yet we've seen that corner, which I would think is ideal, languish for almost over 20 years, which is the amount of time that I've lived in this property. And yet, for some reason, there's a proposal being brought forward to build a plaza just, I would say, about less than the 2 kilometers east of the area that is more appropriate for commercial zoning, but that threatens a delicate environmental ecosystem and serves to potentially pose a significant hazard for the residents of the area, particularly given the increase in traffic. The young man mentioned that in 2014 there was very light traffic, and we heard light traffic, and everybody in my house who was sitting around the dinner table kind of jumped up. Ever since there's been increased population density in Caledon, we have seen a marked difference in our street on Gorway Road and the amount of traffic that goes back and forth on Gorway Road, and the amount of congestion that is on Mayfield. In fact, if you're going northbound on Gorway and try to take a left on Mayfield, you might basically miss any engagement you're trying to make, or trying to make a train, or trying to get to school on time, because the amount of time it actually takes to wait for all the traffic to clear. So in summary, again, I would urge council members and the committee members to look very carefully at all of the impact that this proposed development proposes. We are not opposed to commercial advancement. We are not opposed to entrepreneurship. We actually support that the city should flourish, that the city should provide adequate opportunities for entrepreneurs. We just do not believe that this particular corner of Gorway and Mayfield is the appropriate site for such a development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramandeep. Mr. Chair, that concludes all the delegations, and we just have correspondence under item 11.3 related to this item.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. And I do not see questions of clarification from members of the committee. So I do have a motion, and the motion is moved by Councillor Dillon. Or is there anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion carries in this meeting, and public meeting is now adjourned. So our next is staff report, application pen, the official plan and zoning bylaw architecture, Irwall Developments, Ward 10. I will now hand it over to Alex Sepe from our Development Planning, Building and Economic Development Department. Welcome, Alex.
Point of order. This is where I declare conflict, correct? So I leave the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Singh, for noting. City Clerk, how do we proceed?
Yes, we can. Councillor Singh, if you can leave the session and you can just watch, and then you can return after this item is concluded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, committee members, staff, members of the public. My name is Alex Sepe, and I'm the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and feedback on the application filed by Nitin Malhotra of N Architecture and the applicant Sagar Arora of Irwall Developments. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located within Ward 10 in the eastern part of Brampton. It's located south of Sandalwood Parkway East and west of Airport Road. Next slide, please. So the applicant is proposing to construct a 10-story mixed-use commercial development. The proposal includes three commercial units on the ground floor, 72 residential units on floors 2 to 9, and indoor amenity and office spaces on the 10th floor. Vehicular access is proposed through Airport Road. The applicant's also proposing to establish an access easement to the gas station and commercial property directly to the north. A total of 91 vehicular parking spaces are proposed. Next slide, please. So on the screen in front of you, you'll see a development rendering of the conceptual development. So this is the elevation drawing of the development frontage along Airport Road. Next slide, please. So there's two additional renderings here you'll notice. The first one is the view of the southern portion of the building and the east frontage, so fronting Airport Road. You can notice that the building does step southerly. The second is the view of the north and the east elevation of the structure. You'll notice a white structure directly east of the proposed condo. That's the existing car wash, and that's just west of where the proposed access easement will be established with the property directly abutting the north of the proposed development. Next slide, please. So this proposed map shows properties within 240 meters of the proposed development. Owners of these properties would have received notice by direct mail with respect to the proposal. Notice was also provided in the Brampton Guardian newspaper and on the City of Brampton website. I've received correspondence from some of the neighboring properties which have been appended to the agenda. Next slide. So this is an aerial photo of the site. Once again, it's located at the southwest corner of Sandalwood Parkway and Airport Road. The surrounding land uses include the following. So to the north, there's the commercial plaza and gas station containing a car wash and drive-through. Once again, that is where the proposed access easement will be established. To the south, there's a valley land and watercourse corridor, as well as Stephen Lewin Trail and single detached residential homes further south of that. To the east, east of Airport Road contains single detached residential homes and Fair Lawn Public School. And to the west is the valley land watercourse corridor and Stephen Lewin Trail. Next slide, please. So as mentioned previously, there will be an access easement connecting the proposed site to the commercial property directly to the north. The site contains an existing gas station and commercial plaza. So you'll notice this image that's being taken here is from the neighboring property to the north. This is where the access easement is proposed to connect these properties. So this driveway image that you see right there. Next slide, please. So these are additional photos of where the access easement is proposed. The first photo is looking westwardly, so that is the connection drive-through, as well as you can see a little bit further south past that tree is the actual car wash itself, with the gas station further north to that. So this would be the westerly vantage point of the commercial property. The second image on the screen is the proposed access location. I tried my best to show the proximity to where it'll connect to Airport Road. You'll notice that there's an existing right-in, right-out vehicle entrance connecting the commercial property to the north to Airport Road. Next slide, please. So the subject property is designated open space in the City of Brampton official plan. An amendment to the official plan is required to permit the proposed development. Next slide, please. The property is also located within the Springdale secondary plan area and is sub-designated highway commercial. An amendment is required to permit the proposed development. Next slide. So the subject property is zoned service commercial special section 2193 in the City of Brampton zoning bylaw 270-2004. An amendment to the zoning bylaw will be required to permit the proposed development. Next slide. So there are a few items staff are reviewing on the site. So the first is the site layout to ensure high quality and design, as well as connectivity to both the abutting properties and Airport Road. We want to ensure that massing and the height are appropriate for the area. Working with our traffic staff, as well as the applicant, for the access easement coordination to the abutting property to the north. City staff, such as environmental planning, are also coordinating our review with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority to mitigate any adverse impact on the valley land and watercourse corridor directly south and southwest of the subject property. Next slide, sorry. So prior to finalizing recommendations to council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act, provincial policy statement, conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal official plan, and the City of Brampton official plan. Next slide. Thank you. So this slide shows where staff are at in the review of this application. So the application has been circulated to city departments as well as other agencies for technical comments. Notice of the public meeting was given to property owners in the vicinity of the property and published in the newspaper and on the city's website. We are now at the public meeting stage, so committee members and staff are here to listen to any feedback pertaining to the proposed development. After tonight's public meeting, public comments received from city departments, agencies, members of the public, and matters raised through public delegations will be reviewed and further evaluated. The proposal will be further assessed against the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, the regional official plan, and the city's official plan and secondary plan. Once the analysis and evaluation is complete, staff will return to the Planning and Development Committee with a recommendation report. The recommendation report will address all matters raised by members of the public, external agencies, and other city departments. Anyone that provided their contact information with respect to this application will be advised when the recommendation report will be considered by the committee. Once City Council makes a decision on this application, there is an opportunity to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. Next slide, please. So the report associated with tonight's meeting is available online, and the presentation will also be online shortly. Again, my name is Alex Seppi, and my contact information is posted on the screen. Also on the screen, you will find the contact information of the applicant, Nitin Malhotra from N Architecture. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do we have any delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we do. First, we have Nitin Malhotra from N Architecture on behalf of the applicant, and there's other individuals that are participating this evening in the event there's any questions in regard to the applicant. And then we have two delegations after the presentation from Nitin. So Nitin, we're just bringing up your presentation. You have up to 5 minutes. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members, members of the public. My name is Nitin Malhotra from N Architecture, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to make this presentation on behalf of my client. Like this evening, we would like to showcase and bring to you a very exciting project. It's a 10-story high residential, multi-residential building that we are proposing in this neighborhood that we feel is going to be a very exciting venture. As mentioned by Alex, the location. So location at the site is located at the intersection of two major transportation arteries within the city, where higher density development should be located, which is Sandalwood and Airport Road. On the top of the slide, you can see a view, which I believe is from the southwest side of the property. It's a bird's eye view. You can see the building in totality. You can also see a portion of the ravine that Alex was talking about. At the bottom of the page, we are showcasing the context plan of this neighborhood. So the context. Surrounding land uses are primarily residential, commercial, and open space. The proposed development does not affect any of the adjacent land uses. The site is indeed transit supportive. There are 2 public transit routes nearby and another 7 public transit routes close to the site. The proposed development is located in close proximity to a commercial plaza, a public school, a park, and an open space, which we feel can support this medium to high density project. Next slide, please. So on this slide, again, we are showcasing 2 of the perspectives done by our office. One, again, is a bird's eye view from the south side. Again, you can see the ravine on the left side of the building, and the view at the bottom of the page is a street scape. It's almost from human eye level. On both of these views, you can see the rich materials that we have used as per the request of our client. We are proceeding ahead with using the dark gray black brick, which besides being very dynamic in look, is also quite durable. This brick is called Iron Spot, has elements of iron in it, so in certain daylight it actually shimmers, and throughout the day the look of this look and feel of this brick changes. Besides the dark gray brick, we are using white panel, and to accent these 2 materials we are also using wood panels. site plan. So just to talk a little bit about the site plan, the building is designed close to the public road to promote a bustling urban streetscape, pedestrian safety, and engagement with commercial amenities. The building's main entrance on the ground level is opening onto Airport Road to increase visibility and accessibility to the development. The main parking lot and garbage enclosure are hidden so as to emphasize the building and landscaping from the street view. The main landscape area is designed close to the ravine to protect and enhance the natural corridor. And our consultants and our engineers have been working very closely with TRCA to ensure that, this is done, in a very right and delicate manner. Form of the building, to ensure the building is not overwhelming, the streets right of way, the height of the building is not greater than the width of the right of way on the avenue. To emphasize relationships to lower scale buildings, upper stories on the building are divided and stepped back for angular plane. The building is stepped back every 2 stories, creating space for green terraces. And these green terraces are quite evident from the top view. You can see some greenery. We are also attempting to plant some low-height trees even, if that could be possible. The building is designed on a podium where the ground floor acts as a platform to support the floors above. The podium creates a clear separation for the ground floor as well as helps to create a dynamic relationship to other low-rise buildings in the area. Next slide, please. And again, we can see 2 slides, 2 renderings on the slide. One is view from the north side, as in, you're driving towards the building from the intersection, and at the bottom of the page is a slide I believe was already shown by Alex, which is the site plan. Some of the benefits we feel for this development are that the proposed development is providing the much needed housing given the current housing crisis. It would generally help the city save residential land for other uses. The neighborhood can also benefit from alternate housing types which are being proposed. The commercial opportunities on the ground level can provide access to retail. There is limited existing commercial development in the neighborhood. This development will help the surrounding community get more service and indeed employment opportunities. The proposed development is proposed outside the setback of the building limitation line setback, which is an improvement from the approved site plan of Commercial Plaza. There was indeed an approved site plan. The site was approved as a commercial plaza. So we feel like this is a big positive that this development is actually being planned outside the line of the building limitation. The proposed grading provides a net cut, which is seen as an important than the current situation by TRCA as per hydraulic assessment technical memo. So this is done as per the requirements of TRCA, to ensure that we meet their current standards. Next slide, please. So this slide pretty much showcases our attempt to meet or even exceed the requirements posed by, the TRCA. We have an ecologist, we also have an environmental engineer, not to mention a small army of engineers and consultants, civil engineer, acoustical engineer, we have an archaeological consultant, we have a noise consultant, we have a traffic consultant, not to mention us, the architects, and we also have our planning consultant on board as well. So, we have the water resources engineer and ecologist engagement with TRCA over a multi-year period regarding flood and natural heritage analysis. Proper setbacks are needed to ensure environmental protection. And we have been working with the TRCA. These different lines you see, which are drawn on the site plan, depict these limitations. Then there's some consideration, the south end of the property is part of the red side days habitat, causing the ravine to be in floodplain. As a response, the development is proposed to be outside the 6-meter building limitation line setback to lessen any potential impacts, and this is again as per the discussions and the instructions received from the RCA. Do we have another slide after this? No, that's it. So, committee members, this I feel is a positive development, not only in the neighborhood, but for the city of Brampton, especially keeping in mind the current shortage of residential units. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitin. We have two delegations registered. The first is John and Tom Sandris. John, you are in the session. You can unmute your mic and you have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Hi, so I know it says John, but I'm going to be speaking on behalf of my parents and my grandparents as well. My name is Angela. So speaking on behalf of my grandparents, who are original owners of their house since 1993, both of them, including my own family, reject the proposal for new residency and commercial buildings. From my understanding, and if the area in question is currently zoned for low-density commercial use, with the proposed change now including a 10-story residential area, our concern is that the increase in traffic is already highly congested. The building will also take away from the enjoyment of the property, noting privacy will be lost with a 10-story building located directly behind them. Concerns that may impact the real estate prices as well have been raised by us and the surrounding properties. The increase in population density is already congested, and in a tight-knit area where movement and enjoyment of the already situated area will also be limited. Also, again, during the presentation's description of the building, it wouldn't even fit the surrounding area. It would look out of place and not conform to this, to the either suburban and comforting brick house and family-driven environment. Rather, it forces itself to urban and contemporize a very traditional neighborhood. Having something different is not a benefit in our opinion. This mature area is already set on traditional values of home and comfort, and it does not conform to it. With more people, there will be more environmental concerns as the property backs onto a creek in a natural system. These concerns haven't even been discussed yet. With the state of our environment, traffic, natural heritage, and environmental protection should have been the first things evaluated within this proposal, and it has been raised that it has not been. With an older demographic as well living in the area and having a higher population living behind them, it will also create more residential disruption, disrupt the quiet neighborhood community, and causing complete change in the flow. So thank you for your time and consideration, and we hope you take into account the views and the opinions of the residents already established in the neighborhood, and rather focusing on enhancing the already created, situated, and long-lived areas around it, rather than forcing and cultivating new and undeniably unwanted high-rise buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. The next delegation is from Sylvia Roberts. Sylvia, please proceed. You have up to 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. I've looked at the traffic impact and parking study of this project, and what I have found is that the parking spaces that it is below the number of parking spaces calculated by the current bylaw, and overall this would not really bother me. However, the entire reduction for parking spaces they're requesting is coming from the visitor parking, with a reduction of the visitor parking from the city standard of 0.2 per unit to less than 0.06, which is a 2/3 reduction and quite concerning. This site does actually have decent transit access. The Sandalwood bus, for example, runs every 15 minutes, and the airport bus runs every 10 minutes during rush hour. The city is going to have to significantly increase transportation capacity of this area. The city has already noted that Sandalwood to Airport Road is planned in the long term to get a Zoom route. Airport currently doesn't have plans to be extended north of Beauvert, as far as I know. However, in Caledon, there has recently been an MZO application that the council in Caledon supported for development between Airport and Torbram Road that is gigantic and will involve 3,900 parking spaces. So the city, out of necessity, in order to prevent the area from being completely overwhelmed by cars attempting to go to there, will need to significantly improve transit service anyway. making the site overall having good transit service. One potential issue with the site, in addition to the visitor parking, is in order to properly service that kind of demand to that employment, the city is likely going to need to look at separating the 505 Beauverde, which currently goes from Mount Pleasant on Beauverde from Mount Pleasant to Airport Road, then down Airport Road to Malton Go, into just a Beauverde one, and then separating off the airport section and extending the airport section north to deal with potential traffic demand with passenger volumes for the employment land north. As such, the city needs to ensure that the setback of the property is sufficient because of where it is. It would represent the most likely location for a Zoom stop. And so the city should make sure there's adequate room to be built for that before the building breaks ground, because if you need to plan around that, that could be incredibly expensive and significantly compromise transit service in the future. So that's something important for the city to understand. Between the transit service at Sandal and Airport, overall, the transit service is actually pretty decent in peak periods, but the city is lackluster at best in midday, off-peak, and on weekends. So if the applicant wants, if the city is to approve this application, which overall it seems to meet the tests of good planning with some modifications, you're going to have to increase transit service here. The applications the city has supported in the past couple of years are probably going to require several 100,000 service hours to be added, in addition to the already backlog of several 100,000 hours. So I look forward to seeing the 2023 budget on how the city is going to attempt to not destroy itself because of the severe shortage of transit service hours. The city has currently been taking property tax money from new development, which is supposed to provide services to there, such as running additional buses and using it to fill replace existing infrastructure in areas. So the city needs to stop acting like you have Bernie Madoff as your financial advisor and actually spend that property tax money from new development on services for the new development, like transit that this development is going to need if it's approved. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you, Sylvia. Mr. Chair, that concludes the delegations. We just have correspondence 11.4 related to this item.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. And I don't see questions from members of the committee, so I do have a motion from Councillor Dillon, and it's taken as read. Is anyone opposed? I see none, so the motion carries. And I believe that is the end of our statutory public meetings. We do now go to public delegations. Item 5.4 was considered already during a statutory public meeting. Item 5.2, 5.1, 5.3, and we go on to staff presentations. And we go to report 7.1, application for a draft plan of subdivision, Waterside Estates Incorporated, KLM Planning Partners to permit residential development of 51 dwellings, Ward 10. Do any members have any questions of the staff report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that item was added to and approved as part of the consent motion.
Oh, okay. Apologies. Then we go on to our next item.
The next item would be number 12, Councillor question period.
Do any members have questions regarding the committee business? I see none. Public question period. Are there any members from the members of the public?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no questions sent in the email, but we do have somebody in the attendee list, Alfred Shin, and Alfred was a registered delegate for item 5.1 on today's statutory public notice item. So that matter's been adjourned as a statutory public notice item, but we're gonna unmute Alfred, and Alfred, if you can put your comments in the form of a question, you can get that on the public meeting record. So Alfred, you can make your comments in the form of a question intended to committee, and committee or staff will respond. Please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm sorry I couldn't come in earlier today because of some technical difficulty. My question is, this is about the what is it? About the bylaw, amending of the bylaw for the proposal of the Twin Towers at 3133 George Street North and 18 Elizabeth Street North, Brampton. My question is basically, why do we have two very tall twin towers when we have already got a high-rise with 304 units in there? The density is quite there already. Why should we have another couple of towers to raise the density of population to so much? As a matter of fact, it's unreasonable, up to 1,627 units per hectare. What I see is this is not a good project. Basically, is the developer try to make as much money as possible using a small piece of area, 6,000 square meters, and build up huge towers, making big money. And another thing is, we have a high-rise there already, 12 years old, and just next door, you build up such a tall high-rise there that sheer weight there could be shifting the ground, the foundation. And we actually have, from ABC News, we learned that on June 24th, there was a partial building collapse at the Tower South condominium in a town called Surfside near Miami Beach. And 55 of the 136 units were destroyed. And engineers there are concerned that the recent construction at a neighboring residential building may have contributed to the instability of the tower. And also, Ben Shaver, a structural engineer at Johns Hopkins University, told ABC News, and I quote, "Construction of a neighboring building can certainly impact the condition, particularly the foundation for an existing building." Now, in light of that news above, how do we know that the construction of the two tall towers, which is so close to our building, will not impact the foundation of our building? If something goes wrong, who is responsible for that damage? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So there is a question. I'm not sure if anyone from staff can respond, or we will take his information and staff can respond offline.
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Chair, Alan Parsons here. Just was going to reference the same that through to the individual posing the question. Appreciate the question and the comment, and within the future recommendation report that staff will be bringing forward relating to the matter, the development application that was referenced there, staff will be providing some response. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. So I don't see any further questions, and we now go to adjournment. And committee is scheduled to meet on Monday, February 14th. So I do have a motion moved by Councillor Fortini to adjourn tonight's meeting. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. The meeting is now adjourned. Please stay safe, healthy, and get your vaccination or booster shot if you haven't had the opportunity, practical social distancing, and wear a face mask when required. Thank you very much and have a good night, everyone.